Who sang that song?
Everything.
Who sang that song? This is the way it is.
I don't know.
I
That's just the way
That's
it
just the way
is.
it is.
that's
Some
just
things never
Do do
change.
do 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 do.
the well.
Bruce Hornsby.
I
No.
remember. I remember
In sync.
the old
Bye bye bye.
the old what was it like get the collection of famous singers. This guy wrote 80 million songs, and you're just like, "Oh, wow." And then you listen to songs like I've never heard these songs before, and then some of them are kind of catchy. And I remember one of them was Ronnie Millsap. Like the greatest hits of Ronnie Millsap. And then
All
there's
two of them.
well, they had like 30, and then I was sitting there after I was married and I was working. Didn't get a full-time job at UPS yet, and I had like 2.5, 3 years before I was 21, so I could start driving for them. In the meantime, I was building up seniority. I was working at Burlington Coat Factory, and I'm sitting there working at Burlington Coat Factory. And, they always have like the soft, easy playlist in the background, and some Ronnie Millsap songs coming on. And I started singing along. It's just like, I know this stuff. How do I know this stuff? From the commercial. Like the children will never know the pleasure, the sheer unadulterated pleasure of having songs come on like the greatest hits of Smokey Robinson. They'll never get a trucking school advertisement. They'll never watch Ricky Lake because they stayed home from school. They'll never have those experiences where you're just like, I have nothing to do. Who's this Judge Judy chick? Dude, she's fire. Like, this stuff is hot. It's just like, yeah, tell him, Judy. Tell him. It's like, oh my gosh. The paternity test and all 3 kids weren't him. Oh, Maury, tell me it ain't true. Tell me it ain't true. She was a whore more than once? What?
And a surprise to
belong in the
no
streets.
Welcome to the PARAcast. I'm your host, Tomas the Boss Fernandez. Joining me tonight, the reason USPSA has its own terror watch list, Robert Wyatt.
I warned him. I straight up warned him, and says, if you don't do it, I tell you to. I mean, we're gonna have
What
issues.
did you do to the toilets this year, Robert?
I blew that shit up.
Well, I'm very happy that there is many toilets because I never saw I kind of did the steal yourself. It's just like when you go to smell the milk, you're just like steal yourself, like get STEEL, like just get ready for this stuff. Get like you're a grown man, you can do this. Because I remember walking into there last year and a couple of them, and I was just like, oh, if I sit down, like the bottom of my skinny ass is going to touch the water line. And there's like a bunch of porta potties, and I was just like, half full, but people need to eat better.
Yeah, I was disappointed. I was disappointed in that. One of my favorite parts of the cop match is everyone coming up talking to me like, dude, that toilet, that shitter, it is full. And I always laugh about it because dudes are like, I had to pull my balls up out of the freaking porta potty to keep it from touching.
Oh, towards the end, there was a couple of those bathrooms that definitely were that at that point. So, we definitely got to the end, and we're okay. So, I guess that's a win.
Safe.
The funny thing is too is like I was sitting down, doing what I want to do in a porta potty, and I look straight ahead, and there's an advertisement from Honey Bucket, like, take a selfie in front of a Honey Bucket and you have a chance to win $10,000. And I'm just like, who the F is doing this? Like, what freaking 23-year-old fresh out of college PR person did Honey Bucket need to get? Like, I'm pretty sure that business is self-sustaining without any advertisement. But who's just like, oh, I'm at a national park and I just took a shit in a Honey Bucket, and I'll tell you,
delete that one.
I was like,
It'd be a better.
I'm actually not
advertisement
joking.
if you
I
took
actually
the
have a
picture
picture
inside.
I actually have a picture inside.
Inside.
There you go. See.
Yeah, it wasn't a selfie, but I'm sitting there and I go, and then you have the little urinal and then somebody had stuck a Ben Steger sticker there, and he's like looking at you, and I'm just like, cool. Now Ben Steger's looking at me peeing. Thanks, Ben.
Be on it.
Yeah, it's just like I was sitting there and I was just like, what 23-year-old PR chick got a job at Honey Bucket and like, we need to start a campaign? Why? Like there's one thing I've never been discerning about is like I gotta go crap and I'm walking to the Porta Johns at a concert or something. And I'm just like, Honey Bucket. I don't shit in Honey Buckets. I'm a Porta John man. You know, like who has done that? Like who is brand
You're
loyal?
George, you're
I'm-
George Clooney from Oh Brother
I'm
Where
a,
Art Thou?
Yeah.
I'm a Dapper Dan man.
God damn it!
Oh yeah, like
Don't give me no fop.
yeah, that's exactly like. So you're sitting there, you're going like, what the hell is this? Like I
Why
understand
don't we
like
shit in
having
honey
like
buckets.
I understand like if you sat there and had a roll of toilet paper in your backpack or whatever, and you're just like, I just I need Charmin. Like I was like, hey, whatever floats your boat, cool. But I've never seen anybody be selective on a porta potty thing. And like, here's the deal: no one has the variety package. Like whatever, if you get 5 porta potties, you're getting 5 porta potties that are from all one place, and that's what it is. And it's just
All I know
I
is when
don't.
I gotta go Tuesday, I'm not that picky. It's just the way it is. Sorry.
Yep, you do it in the back of a UPS truck once. You become
And they
non-picky
never live
every.
it down.
You get a certain level of pickiness, but not much then after that. Also joining us, he's known for one thing in both college and the trans community. It's not passing. Jared Stepp.
No comment.
And we went out. We shot the USPSA state match, presented by Barry's and main sponsor Homestead Cabinets, the wonderful Clay Grover, and with all
Clay
the
Grover's our hero.
he is our hero. It was fantastic. So it was a well done match, very polished, very nice looking. Everything was fantastic, and
And there was beer not on the range. Not on the range.
absolutely.
Uh-huh.
Absolutely. Beer not on the range. There was also like a bunch of like I wouldn't say overly complex stages, but a bunch of fantastic stages, which I was just like these are like national level kind of quality stages, and they are like they flowed nice. There was the options that you could take them if you wanted to. A lot of them, even though they weren't, they had there was tuxes and all that stuff, and like half partials and double stacks and stuff like that, and no shoots. But there was enough stuff that you had to get all your points on every single one of those stages. Like I saw a bunch of stages, especially on the first day, which I shot like a stage 6 in on first day. And I was sitting there looking at that, and I look at it like this is a stand, like it's pretty much like almost a moving standard stage where you have to get points. And I thought it was like there was not a whole lot of stage that you did not have to get points on in that entire match, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, no, I'm really happy how it turned out. I mean, everybody that we talked to, they're always like nice and complimentary, but everybody seemed to enjoy the product, and I like to think that as the years have gone by, we just kind of started dialing it in more and more and more, and so yeah, we shot it all day. We shot it all day Friday, and everything just ran, and that's nice. And like we talked about, Jared and I were talking about like stage flow and stuff like that, and we always have like our faster stages on what would be the right side of the bays, and then our slower stages because we have longer bays there, so we can kind of leg things out a little bit more on the left. And you're always, what is it? Jared says like stage flow is the god that you sacrifice everything else onto.
Yes.
Yeah, and it was I from watching the match and everything kind of flow through. It seemed like we didn't really have any backups, and so things just moved really well. And that always makes you happy because it's, to me, you can have a great match, you can have great stages, but if people start backing up, then your match is shit, and they're going to tell you that it's shit.
Yeah.
So here's a question.
Mhm.
I always thought it was a 5-minute walkthrough.
Oh no, it can be it can change.
Oh, really?
Like at bigger matches, I've seen them do four a lot. And
okay. Because I just always thought it was a 5-minute walkthrough, and so they were doing 4-minute walkthroughs on everything on the match, and I didn't say anything obviously, but I was just like, oh, I never really
Yeah.
pay attention to
Yeah.
the walkthrough time because normally it's never an issue. But this match, it was an issue because there were a number of stages where I still had not decided what I wanted to do. And like I mentioned, I talked to Robert about this, and I was talking to my wife about after the match. And the two big things that I think I messed up on was one, I didn't prepare for the match. One, like by practice, and also I didn't come walk the stages, make good plans, et cetera, et cetera. I think if you really want to succeed at a major match, you need to go and get with people that you know and trust who are good and effective, who are going to be able to see those best stage plans
Yes,
and
go
do that.
basically go ask Tyler Turner what he thinks. Don't ask Robert Wyatt what he thinks. Big
Well,
difference.
Well, there were a handful of stages where I saw it and I saw that this stage has a better way to shoot it. But
Mhm.
I do not have the time to program that stage in
Especially,
because
yeah.
it was a complex stage. And
Especially
so I
when
said,
you start becoming the third, the first, the second,
right.
the third shooter in the stack. Like when you're
Mm.
And
number 10,
that's what got me. And so on one of the stages, I was like, dude, I know there's a better way to shoot this. I don't have time to find it. It was the barrel stage. I'm
Mhm.
like, so I'm just gonna do what I can see, and I know this will work, and it will be slower, but I'll get, it is what it is. And I shot the stage, and it was fine. I did it, but it was like I think 7 or 8 seconds off of the where I was supposed to be at, so
Mhm.
that hurt quite a bit. But that was the two big things. Was one, I needed to prepare better, and including with that is getting the stage plans and having that done, because a lot of them you didn't really need a crazy fancy stage plan, but there are a couple where yes, no, that definitely walking the stages before would have helped immensely.
well, there's
And I've never really had a problem with that at a match. This is the first time I've ever had it at a match where I did not know what I was going to shoot. One shooter, when I was on the on deck shooter, I still hadn't ironed out my plan, and that happened a couple times this match. So I mean, that shows that it was they were good stages because there were that many options, but it also
Right.
shows a deficiency on my part, whereas I didn't prepare for it.
well, there's a couple reasons I think that kind of happened to you in this time. Like the other thing is too is like me and you shot in a squad where it was a very chill, very relaxed squad, like
Right.
pretty much, and like, so like here's the deal, like you don't really have to think about everybody else and see someone else's performance and then have that in the back of your mind. The other part is you don't get to grift off of the preparation or seeing other people's like stage plans. Like if you go shoot with Charlie Perez, guess what you're gonna get? Especially if you get to shoot after him all day long, you're gonna get good
The
stage
Charlie
plans.
Perez show.
You're gonna get the Charlie Perez show, and then just like just like it's 1991, you put on your super cheap Nikes because you can't afford Jordans, and you just try to act like your idol or hero for that day or whatever, and try to be competitive at that. Or you see like a few different deficiencies, or you see actual plans, and you can do that. But like if you shoot in a squad where you're just like, I just don't want to have everyone else's performance in my head, like then you have to bring 100% your own performance to the match.
Yeah,
There's no
and I
doubt
think
that go ahead.
no, I was just going along with that. That was the second thing that I think I messed up on, because at a major match, I think it is you want to squad with someone that you know you should be either right next to them or right behind them. Not someone who is significantly better than you. Like if I don't want to shoot with some god level dude who's going to shit on me the entire day and make me feel bad. But I do want to shoot with someone that I'm chasing, that I'm like, that's attainable and that's doable for me to catch this guy. And at local matches, a lot of times he's either right in front of me or I'm right in front of him. But it's good to have someone there as a pace car. Like, for instance, my pace car for this was I wanted to be where Kevin was because Kevin's a better shooter than me. I can do some things better than Kevin, but as a general rule of overall USPSA shooting, Kevin is
Mm.
better at me. So I wanted to squad with Kevin, and that was kind of my goal, but work got in the way. I wasn't able to shoot that day, and so I got shoved onto a random squad, and it was a great squad. It was a lot of fun. Tom jumped on at later on, but that was one of the problems I think for me was on that squad. I was by far, I think, the best shooter. And that was a problem for me because I started to go slower than I should have been because I started to. Um, Tom's going to disagree with me on this,
You didn't
but I
have a
started
pace
going for
car?
points, but I stopped going for speed. I stopped chasing
Mm.
speed as much as I needed to, and I really needed to keep that in gear, I think, especially on day 2 where we had those large field movements. And I think that's one of the things that started to get me was I stopped really gunning it and going for speed on those large field movements. And so I don't know. I think if I rectify those two things next year, I think I'll place a lot better and a lot more where I'd like to be. Um, so we'll see what happens. But overall, it was absolutely a great match. I only had a couple little mistakes that cost me probably about 10 to 15 seconds over the whole course of the match. And that is what it is. I would have liked to have gone faster, but also part of that was coming back to the stage prep and I've been shooting my Glock a ton at work recently, and I've been doing this. Lots of excuses, right? None of them are valid, but basically, I just
No,
wasn't
they're
prepared
not
for it at all.
they're not valid, but I mean they're just explanations of where you are in a timeline.
Yep. I
Yeah,
think
it is what it is, but it was
Yeah.
fun. A lot of fun.
the one thing about going through that match and the speed over the accumulation of points, like there's never a time where I said, Jared, you got to like slow down, but there was one stage where Jared,
Right.
I saw Jared draw and shoot below the kneecap of what would be a full size popper, and then just like
Right.
to the wind with everything, and it was just like, bro, you gotta aim. And then literally the next stage, like we had the 3 per stage, and Jared just tore the shit out of that stage. Like, shot excellent, shot well, did not over transition, did not under transition. And I think like the one thing too, it's like you get the feedback of a positive and a negative experience, especially like there's so many times in a match that we might have that back and forth where like you have this completely negative experience on a stage, and then you like the remedy is this one thing and it goes very well, and then you're just like, I'm going to double down on this remedy because it's working well for me, and then you're just like, well, and then it starts becoming over aiming, over concentration on getting points, and then like it's just like all it takes is 1 or 2 or 3 stages in a row where you're like, I'm getting a lot of points, I feel really good about this, and on practice score it's working out, and then like by the next day it becomes a positive feedback loop of then you start giving everything to the points god. And so like
Right.
there's a lot of stuff that can happen in the mental game of this thing. And so like then like what we if you look at hit factor, if you look at the hit factor in the stages and harshly understand the worth of a point per second, then you can kind of make the right decisions. But if you look at a stage and go like, I had a mic and a delta on the last one, therefore I am going to apply accuracy to everything, and then that you're putting the points above the time or whatever like that, then you run into a problem. And then you can also like run into a problem that a lot of people have is like speed above everything else. And then like so it's for a absolutely mind f of a scoring system, like congratulations everybody on hit factor. Like it is so mathematically true. Emotional beings like human beings have a hard time getting everything correct on perception on what's worth it and what's not, and then they also can dictate our stage performance very well, and it takes a very long time. And like it takes a very long time. Like there's a couple handfuls of people that I've actually known that can execute that on a personal level very well over the years. And it's like Kenny understood that very, very well. And like there's guys like Charlie Perez and stuff, but they're not local to us. And like Kevin is like on Kevin's understanding it. Like he can read the
Right.
Sanskrit, right? But for like it's very hard to sit there and go through because there's people that have many, many years of shooting, and you see them perform and it's like they teeter back and forth, teeter back and forth, teeter back and forth. And so it, it's it can mess with you. There's no doubt about it.
It's fun though.
He's
No,
great.
it was good. It was a fun match. Kevin and I shot it all day Friday, and
And your
it's always fun to do that.
and your performance was very, very good, Robert.
I had a lot of points. It was slow. I mean, when you look at like everybody who beat me, I mean, it's like, oh yeah, these guys are beating. But so yeah, I mean, you certainly need to speed up. But I was in the same boat as Jared. I mean, I had no real practice going into this thing, and so I just went into it and I shot the match. And there's always the excuse, I was working, doing this, that, the other. But at the end of the day, it is what it, I actually came out of this match really happy
Yeah.
because I feel like I shot a good match. And everybody who came ahead of me, they were very, very good, and they did a great job. But I've got the Red Rock Rumble. That'll be my last major of the year. I'm going to go down and work that in 3 weeks. But it was nice to know that I can actually put points on the board when I need to, and that made me happy.
Yep. I mean, I literally had no plan to shoot this match. Robert literally convinced me to do it at day of, like, first shots are at 7:30. I leave the house at 7:50. And I'm heading up there, and I'm like, I have the belt set up for the VP9, and I'm like, I could go shoot carry optics and go there and watch everybody who is or was equivalent on my level, has now surpassed me because of my inactivity over the past year. And like I could go there, shoot that, and feel like shit, or I can just go F it. I'll go shoot prod with my USP and go have some fun. And so even though I didn't have all the right equipment for it, I brought out the USP and shot out the USP9. And I had besides walking up to the first stage and basically shooting through on it and not taking a stage plan and like 2 mic and a stage. Besides that, like it started to go like I liked it. Like I watch the videos right now and I go like, this guy's slow. This guy does not split very well. But the accumulation of points and knowing that I could still make every USPSA shot that I wanted was very good. And I shot 70% of Neil's and Neil shot production. So I'm like, okay. And like the points and the accuracy, there was another master, and I think if I literally would have had like at least beaten this other master production shooter on the last stage. I go up there, I make a reload, and the USP has this weird thing where like sometimes the magazine does not want to seat all the way, and so I stick the magazine in, I go up there, and Ron Davidson's filming me, and I go to bring up the gun and the magazine falls back out, and then I have to go through my third pouch, which is super tight, stick it in and finish the stage. And then you go in there and you put it in the score, and you're just like, what if I was 2 seconds faster? Oh, okay, that would have, all right, I would have won. At least master and prod, And so you just
I have learned just through like my own emotional well-being, I do not ever play the what if game because because I always what if to my favor, but then like there's that little voice in the back of the head that says like, well, if you could have done that, you would have. And then and if you get a gimme, where's their gimme?
Yep.
What if you do the what if when the practice score competitor score doesn't match the practice score score?
That's weird. We don't know what the hell happened there, because I mean how those things didn't match up is beyond. I mean I'm going to send an email or something at some point because I have no idea why that happened. It's the strangest thing.
Do you want to explain?
Do you want to talk about that, or?
I don't want to create drama that doesn't need to exist.
All right.
And we'll just leave it at that.
And when there's answers, there'll be answers, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, if we get a solution, then sure we'll talk about it.
There's
no point.
There was a minor glitch in somewhere
in the way that practice weird. Score. Yeah, we still don't know, and it's life. It happens, but it's. I mean, who knows?
Yep.
Who knows? The other thing that was kind of fun was so the match was on Saturday, Sunday. Monday night, the board of directors had their big meeting where they wanted to introduce a new bylaw 7.9 that effectively takes away some of the roles and gives the board the ability to take roles and responsibilities away from the sitting president, but the one that a lot of us were listening for was there was a conversation among the board about how to handle the Flux Raider situation that was going to come up at Utah State. And the board, Jim Boone kind of spearheaded it. Ben Berry presented just such a fantastic solution. And the board, functionally, the board told Troy no. You don't get to arbitrarily write rules without going through the actual process. You don't get to do that, and instead,
Well, that's good.
it certainly is. And Ben made a motion in that to say, hey, we actually need to talk about this a lot longer. But in the meantime, let's say that let's basically say a short barrel rifle is a short barrel rifle, and to that end, Ben Griffith in this case can compete. And it was a 7-2. It was a 7-2 vote with what was it? Area 8 and Area 5, the two range masters, voting against allowing him to compete, where everybody else voted to allow it, which I thought was
that's the right
quite
decision.
nice. Well, yeah, and functionally, in a funny way, what it did, which I think was really nice, is it eliminated the potential for drama at our state match. And that's very self-serving for us. I realize that, but you want your matches to go off and go run as smoothly as possible. And thankfully, the board, they just said let's take a step back, make a decision at a later date, and in the meantime, let's let this guy compete. And that's a great compromise, I felt.
Well, and it sets a good precedent where if the firearm by the definitions which were set forth in the rule book are met, then there's no toss up of like, well, but we don't like this one. Because that's the one
Right.
thing with emerging technologies is like eventually there's going to be something that just somebody's going to figure something out, and something in new magazine design or something like that that's going to allow for a definite competitive advantage.
That was the hardest thing I had. I mean, I sat and watched I watched the board meeting through that whole thing, and Troy was sitting there and he's saying, I don't care what the ATF says. Just because the ATF says that it's a rifle doesn't mean the USPSA thinks it's a rifle. And you had Dan Click, who was the Area 5 director. He said, well, all of the range master instructors, we all agree with Troy. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, I don't know if this is just like an appeal to authority, but like my wife and I have an incredibly good relationship and we are pretty much lockstep on almost everything, but we don't agree all the time. And if you have something that's so controversial like this, and Dan Click is making the argument that all the range masters agree with Troy, is that making an effective argument that potentially Troy has too much control over the range masters and there's no dissension allowed?
Well, that's
it
the
makes me
logical
wonder.
That's the appeal of authority
be my
logical fallacy.
question.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing. I'm like, why would all the supposed range masters all agree with Troy over this when it's like clearly this is just verboten, like this is very basic English language stuff. So it's like I don't understand why all the range masters have been like sworn to like gobble that dick or what's the deal there? Because with everybody who's not a range master is like, guys, this is kind of obvious. Like, what are you talking about? It's an SBR. Whereas the range masters are like, well, the SBR rules aren't the same SBR rules that we follow. Like, what is that? who the hell? Like, what honest to God is that? And that's a great question, Robert. Those have we created some sort of weird ass cult where the RM Institute is like, is there something wrong there? Because to have supposedly every single one vote erroneously is a red flag.
And it was
you also have
it was really I was gonna say it was really interesting because Dan Click, he kept making this appeal to authority argument, and finally Andy Erickson, the Area 3 director, stepped in and I'll have to find the exact quote, but he said, you guys may be really smart when it comes to the rules, but you don't hold a monopoly on the plain text reading of the English language. And it was just, I mean, it was just kind of one of those moments
Good
where it
job,
was just
Eddie.
like, yeah, sincerely. I mean, it was just like, yeah, I mean, you guys
It's
are trying to
John
make some.
Cena.
Well, and you're not unilaterally available to like just sit there and go like our interpretation of what this is that's the rules, that's what's going to go down, and then we're going to be able to stop things. Like, nope. Like,
Mhm.
the board will make the proper rule suggestions, and the range masters can then effectually uh, enforce those.
Right.
That's how it's going to work.
Well,
It's just
yeah,
like
I don't understand the whole NROI and how they have this weird power. And I'm like, what? No, you guys are just here. I don't know. I just thought I find it a very odd situation that we have two distinct organizations, whereas it's not like an arm of USPSA, where it's like I would think that USPSA would have NROI under it as opposed to a distinct separate organization, because I'm like, well, what else does NROI officiate?
I mean, functionally, the value of the NROI, at the end of the day, is to legislate, is to create a rule book that is
But for
adjudicated
USPSA only,
fairly.
right?
Yeah.
Only USPSA. So why isn't it a part of USPSA? Like, why isn't it, shouldn't it be like the president here, and then you have like the areas over here, and then the range master organization underneath that? Like, I would think that there would be a pyramid down organization, not a pyramid over here for USPSA and then a pyramid over here for NROI. But it's like, but the NROI position is an elected position. It's not any of those type of positions. This is a paid organization.
Yeah.
But this
DNROI
organization over here,
serves at the pleasure of the board.
and so I don't know. It just, and we say DNROI, the direct, Troy serves at the pleasure of the board, but I haven't seen a lick of evidence
a
to
pleasure.
support that.
I
It it
I would
it
actually push
all
back on
seems
that
that
a little bit because
okay.
Ben, no, bear with me. Actually, here I got to read this because I finally found it again. But this is what Andy Eric says: you have a lot of experience reading and interpreting the rules, but I don't think any of you have a special superpower when it comes to plain language reading of the English language. I liked that.
Yep.
It was pretty damn good. No, I think what's happening is now you're starting to get board members that are actually pushing back on the rules, and I think Ben Barry is probably. I honestly think Ben Barry's probably the best at it right now because he's coming in and listening to him talk and how he thinks about things. It seems to me that he looks at things like this is what the rules say. And you don't get to play interpretation games of what you think the rules say. The rules are very plain. They say this. And if they don't say this, then we're going to be effectively like we're going to be shooter ROs in the sense that like if it doesn't say you can't, then you can. And that's how USPSA has always been. USPSA is unique in the idea where in IDPA, we give you the kind of the velvet rope tour through things. USPSA says, here we're going to present you with a series of challenges and allow you to solve it. And in that, we're going to give you a small set of guidelines and rules. But as long as you comply with those rules, you go and figure it out. You go and do good things.
Well, it's basically the Robert's Rules of Orders fight again.
Yeah.
Like, it's been like, I know you guys would like to run it like this, but this isn't how it works. This isn't how it runs, and this is how we're going to proceed with it from here on out. And like, listen, if they come up with some rule that doesn't allow the flux in, fine. Like, as long as the process is above board, fine. It should be allowed in. It's in my opinion. But like,
well, it's funny because they came back just before the match started. I think it was on Thursday. I got included in an email that was sent to Ben where they said that where Troy sent it, and he said, just so you know that that PCC that Flux has to be encased in a gun case,
Not carried
or
appendix under a
not
shirt. He
carried
wants it
appendix.
in a separate bag.
Yeah, and it was just such an odd thing because he made this argument, and I don't know why he did it, but Troy did it anyway. But it was like, functionally, what's the difference between a cloth case and one made of Kydex? If it's covering the trigger guard, because what are they saying? Like in 5.2.1.8, to be considered case, the PCC must be in a case or sleeve which covers the muzzle past the trigger guard and prevents access to or manipulation of the trigger. Well, if it's in a Kydex holster, it's preventing access or manipulation of the trigger. So it's kind of weird, and I don't know why. I don't know why Troy chose to kind of do that. I don't know if it was like this parting shot kind of thing. It was just
Yeah,
it was
that's
so
his
odd
last
to me.
word. It was a
Yeah.
last word situation where Troy got overran and he's pissed about it, and so he comes back and just does one last clap and like, well, I'm still in charge. See, yeah.
Yeah, well,
It genuinely felt that way because, I mean, objectively, what is the difference between one made of cloth and one made of Kydex? It just really doesn't exist.
the way he carries that Flux is safer than the race holsters we allow in every division.
Probably,
This
yeah,
this
actually, it is.
this is starting to come down to the
I mean, actually,
listen,
Tommy, think about this: is the way that he was carrying that Flux, is safer than even the PCC situation, because
Yep.
the PCC, it goes, you actually pull it out of the case facing the berm. We had to make a rule saying facing the berm, and the muzzle must be carried upright, or the gun must be carried upright, kind of thing.
so you don't
I mean,
muzzle a bunch of people.
his is like safely tucked into this Kydex holster,
Pointed straight down.
kind of straight down. It's not. I mean, and it stays there until the RO makes ready. And so,
Like the other
arguably,
88% of the
it's
guns on the
actually
range.
yeah, it's a whole lot safer than anything else. I never thought about that until we just talked about it, but it's
Oh.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, well,
No, it absolutely is a safer method of doing it. The silly thing is just like, yeah, because what you guys are talking about. Oh, once that PCC goes into the bag, it is now a safe thing. And honestly, you could point the bag at people and that'd be just fine because it's in a bag and you can't see it anymore. And so
Well,
now it's safe.
If I disconnected my holster and had this like VP9 in a holster and was walking around like this everywhere and be like, hey, everyone would be like, what the hell are you doing? Like
Yeah.
remember in 3-gun rules, remember 3-gun back in the day, like you couldn't go prone with a loaded handgun in your holster because it would be loaded and pointing up range.
Right.
It's just like, no, this is dumb.
Well,
and
I
like,
mean, the SIG 320 kind of proved that would be a good point. I mean,
I think all safety arguments
and the
need to be
CZ Shadow too.
excluding. Yeah, she sees these shadows.
This is a good point.
But
All
like,
right.
let Troy for a little bit longer because the board is a completely different makeup of the board. And, if he wants to keep pushing this stuff like that, then like you'll just see where that ends up.
So one thing I do want to say about the match, though, these past couple days, I had one RO that was my favorite RO. There are a lot of great ROs. The CROs, they were all fantastic. Everybody did a great job. I was really happy with the match in general, especially with the ROs. I didn't feel once, because a lot of the times in the past, I've come to state matches, and some of the ROs have been a giant bag of cocks. And some of the ROs have been aggressively trying to make it not fun. And I didn't have that at all.
Everyone was great.
This match was absolutely great.
No sketch
Everyone
ROs.
was great.
Yeah.
No sketchy ROs. The best one, though, was this guy who talked just like this when we were talking. And we were like, hey, guys, how's it going? He's, oh, hey, guys, welcome to my stage. But then, as soon as it's prepare time, and he goes, make ready. And you just turn around and you're like, what are you doing?
Optimus Prime?
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. Is that Optimus?
And you're just like, what's happening?
Transformers,
you make ready,
roll out.
and then he just goes in. Again, same thing. He drops his voice like 5 octaves. Now you have some big black man behind you going, are you ready? And you're like, oh God, maybe I'm not. Stand by.
I'm not man enough to shoot this stage.
It was wild. It was hilarious. And that was by far, he was my favorite RO. Because I think you probably missed out on that, Robert. But like,
oh yeah, Oh, for
He
sure.
was
I
just
didn't
one of the
get any of
random
that.
old dudes. I think he was on train, like
He was
on.
on he
I
was
don't
on the
know.
part-time stage. I think his name was Jim.
I don't know.
Yep.
But I it was the funniest thing that I've seen at the USPSA match because he was like that was just how he did it, and that was just and he did it for every single shooter. Every single shooter got the super low. Are you ready? And every time everybody's just like, I don't know if I am now.
Let's
I've never
I thought I
never
was.
been propositioned like this. That was very breathy. I don't know how if I like this,
yeah.
but it was wonderful.
No, it was
Kudos
wonderful.
to that guy.
You know what else was wonderful is the Dominate Defense belts I saw everywhere. I used the new American Operator belt, the final iteration on that, and I threw 3 mag pouches with 15 round USP magazines in a ghost pouch and put it inside the waistband holster. No inner belt, no nothing. Carry that like a champ all day long. Completely stable, completely nice. So for your light concealed carry needs, it is a lot of belt and a lot of support, and it was absolutely fantastic. So check out Dominate Defense and American Operator gear. Use promo code PARA10 and save 10% off. If you would like to get that weight up, get that gun fat, we were talking with one great shooter, Kevin Isaac, and all the fantastic products that W74 produces. If you got a pistol, most likely there's a guide rod for you and a spring setup to help you out. And you can also, while you're over there, check out some Rune tactical equipment. And on both of those websites, you can use PARA10 and save 10% off W74 guide rods and Rune tactical. So, stage 14, what is it? 14 or 15? The part-time stage.
Stage 14 was
14.
the part-time stage. That had what? Ed Court, George, Tech.
Yeah.
I will never be able to say George's
George
name.
Archer Bowman.
George was on there, and then it was Cody or Rory? I can't remember who.
Yeah.
Rory.
Was it Rory? Rory
Yeah.
was Rory was the other RO.
I loaded my USP and he's just like, dude, that's really cool. I've never seen a guy out here shooting a USP. And I was like, yeah, that's all right. It's a blast. Part-time stage, 6 targets, basically 2 positions spread out in a U shape. Shooter can start anywhere in the shooting area or standing outside the shooting area, right? And then you got 5 seconds. And there's a couple people, I think 3 or 4 people who actually made shots at all 6 targets. And so let's talk about part-time stages and their place in effectively using them in such a thing like a state match, because they were part-time Virginia counts, right? So no making up shots. And
Travis.
Travis going to Travis. And so like literally the thing with Travis is like 2 for the love of all things holy. 2, not 4, not 1, 2. 2 shot, 2 shot, 3 shot, go.
Well, if it's a required 12 shots and you put 3, and then you don't finish it, then you're not getting extra shots, so you're fine. It's totally legit. It was.
But he had 3 alpha.
Yeah, making up alphas with alphas.
As long as he didn't shoot that stage or shoot the target at the end, he's fine. But no, the part-time stage was interesting, and it got built, and it was fun and everything like that. We've been building part-time stages for 2 or 3 months, trying to kind of like dial them in and figure them out. But this one, the initial read on this was going to be 4.5 seconds.
And just to let you guys know, like 5 seconds that's a sub-second draw, like a 15 split on like 3 targets, transitioning through a freaking fast book, and then like probably 12 splits on the rest of these targets and transitions to kind of make it
1.5 to 2.5 second at minimum sprint
Not
between.
a single person got 60 points on that stage.
Yeah, and so that was at 5 seconds with a 0.3 over, so 5.3, and the initial was 4.5. That's what the initial thought was, and after some cajoling from multiple people, the match director set it to 5. And there was an argument on one side that said that we don't want people to finish this. And the argument that I have is that I was arguing for a 5-second part-time. From my perspective, I think the top 20% should be able to finish it. Maybe not necessarily points, but they should be able to get to the end and actually be able to engage all the targets.
Fire the
in
required
that time.
shots at the
Fire the
appropriate amount of
required
cards.
shots. And so basically your G's and M's should be able to do that, and then they can leg it out in turn. They can accuracy it out in terms of points. But if you make it so that it can never be finished, then functionally what you're doing is you're saying, okay, well, these targets will not even be attempted because nobody's going to even get there because the time is way too short, which is then effectively going to take what would be like a 6-target stage and cut it down to 4 because everybody just knows there's no way you're going to get there.
Yep.
And so you're really not actually doing anything. And so if you're going to put a series of targets out there, then it needs to be something that could be accomplished. And we can have a debate about the time on that, but the top end guys still need to be able to actually hit that spot.
Yep.
And that's kind of how I look at it. And I thought 4.5 was just too aggressive. I tried it. I went out there when we were building the stage, because I was there on Thursday, but I only shot Friday, and so I was just looking at it, and I just took my stopwatch and I'm like, there is no way in hell that this thing is going to be shot in 4.5. It just is impossible. And convinced the match director. A handful of us convinced the match director to go to 5 seconds, and I think that was a sporty time. I think there was, I think only a few people actually hit the par time. Not that many, but nobody got all the points out of it. So I think the 5 was probably the correct correct
we
answer.
Had 2 people get 54 points, and that was a limited optics and a carry optics shooter.
Mm-hmm.
And then a couple PCCs got 52, one got 50, another limited optics got 53. But there are only 5 shooters in the entirety of the match. In the 260 people, there are 5 shooters who got 50 points or above.
And that kind of tells me that the time is maybe a little tight, but it's just about knocking on the door of being right where it needs to be.
Yep. Well, and there's a difference too about setting up these kind of part-time stages in a USPSA match and then having a part-time Virginia count stage.
Mm-hmm.
There is a difference if everything is too easy in something like a Pro-Am match where like you could end with a tie, and like ties happen in Pro-Am. It's not unreasonable for them to happen. But in a USPSA match, it's a statistical tie on everything.
Yeah.
It's like almost impossible to come up with. And so there is a way that you could sit there and go through where like it's tight enough that most people can make shots on 6 targets. But if it's really too tight, all you're doing is like if you look at the vast majority of people who are in the 30 to 40 point range, like 30 to 40, that's a bunch of shooters. And so what can happen is like then you just have people who are going like, hey, like an Alpha Charlie on 4 targets, that's what, 32 points. Well, if I just, I can just shoot 6 alphas and get 30 and then wing a couple Charlies on the 4th one as I coming around, and I'm still in that same neck of the woods. And so then like the push kind of stops. The push stops where it's reasonable to get like 4 targets. If it's going to be 4 targets, I could get 8 alphas on these 4 targets in a reasonable amount of time, and so that's what the plan's going to be.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I can't remember who said it. It was on the NROI podcast. It was Jody Human. It is still a points game. You're trying to maximize your points as efficiently as possible, and so that is really important. Because points is ultimately on those stages. That's everything. But at the same time, there's a balancing act, and I'm not really a big fan of part-time stages from the perspective of it always feels like if it's a part-time stage in terms of just actual shooting, that's fine. But when you turn it into a leg race, like we had George on our stage, and George, he's just been banged up in life, and like he's going to shoot the first 3 targets, and that's effectively it, because
Right.
he can't move. And so it's not to say that we have to cater to the lowest common denominator or whatever, but at the same time, it it I'm just not a fan of part-time stages as much as I used to be, because I don't think they're really presenting a tremendous amount of value. At level ones, I think they're a hoot. At major matches, maybe I don't like them as much. And so I'm not this. It's certainly not something that I'd go to war over, and I'm not going to die on a hill trying to defend it for sure. But it's just things that I've thought about just over time. Like we've seen it a lot, and I'm like, I think I'm done. I'm tired of seeing these things like all the time. Let's find something else.
There's
Yeah, I would have preferred that stage if it was just that stage as it was,
Mhm.
no part-time, and just do it.
Yeah,
Just do the stage.
Yep.
That would have been a fun stage to just do. And it could have been a nice little short course because you have the long walk. And a lot of times on the long walk, you go and you grab food or you grab something from your vehicle when you're going from 14 all the way back to 1. And so, I mean, I can understand it from a match flow perspective. You want to have a short stage there. But on the flip side of that, also, it's like, well, you also have a long stage on 1. So I don't know if you really want to do that short of a stage on 14.
well,
But I mean, it worked out and it was fun.
That's actually an interesting point you make, Jared. That is actually planned into, that
Right.
particular stage we can't put a lot into it, which is hilarious to me because every year you put the jungle run.
I put
for
the running stage. and
Yeah.
That's a giant. That's a giant stage.
Yeah,
And that's a tiny
you've done
bay.
it. Yeah, you've done it really efficiently, but where you zigzag your way through and you've made it work.
Yeah, and it seems
For-
like you have a 5-second stage, and it's just like now we have a bottle up. You have a 13-second running stage, and it's just like now it flows fine.
Yeah. Well, but what we think about on that stage is we actually take into account that it's going to take competitors somewhere between 3 to 4 minutes to make the transition over back to stage 1,
Yeah.
which
Right.
then gives stage 1 a little bit more time to spread it out and just put a little bit
To
more
breathe.
in there. And it actually worked out pretty well. I think the worst that I saw it was 4 shooters back on stage 1 when the squad caught up to him, and that's not bad. I
Yep.
mean, it's really
I thought
not
the
bad.
stage 1 guys said that they had a couple times where they had half a squad.
Oh, when I talked
where
to
they'd
when I
only
last
shot
talked,
half a
that's
squad.
okay. Oh, okay. Then that's my bad.
So,
I had talked
just-
to him and I had heard 4 to 5. So
one thing that I do as a match director to alleviate that is I'll actually have a couple planned things that if something is getting backed up, I can insert this in between these 2 stages and try to
Mhm.
slow it down or try to give them something else to do.
yeah,
Or like I'll go over
Prizes,
there and like,
something,
okay,
yeah.
we'll give out food, we'll give out treats, we'll give out this, or we'll have a chat, or I'll have them come over to the pavilion and we'll talk for a minute, and then I'll send them on. But they're little things that if I need to, because all I'm doing is when I'm match directing, I'm just running around checking the flow. I'm
Yeah.
just going around checking on ant flow, and so that's it.
seems
And so
plenty.
anything I can do to sometimes it is, and I'll do whatever I can to slow it down if I need to, or other times I'll speed it up. And I typically have a couple runners that are just free flowing ROs. And if I
Yeah.
find out that, hey, Matt, stage 2's getting a backup, I'll get on the radio or I'll call like, hey, Tyrell, can you go over to stage 2 and whip them a little bit? And
Yep.
they're getting a little bit lax there. Maybe they need a break. Bring them some monsters and let's see if we can get them going a little faster.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do.
The
And I imagine they do something similar, but I think the match our squad didn't have any issues with stage flow. We only had a couple times where we showed up and the squad in front of us had maybe 3, 4, 5 shooters.
well, and honestly,
which wasn't bad.
And honestly, it wasn't that bad because like you kind of needed it sometimes. Like the one thing too is like when you are like we have all these nice pavilions, we have all these nice tables nowadays. Like, but when you go right onto the next stage, the chances of you using those pavilions and stuff like that is kind of limited. So that nice little like 10-minute break on there
Right.
is
It was
not
nice,
too
actually.
bad. I it was kind of a funny thing I did last night. I went on like some of the old like USPSA things, and I started looking at stuff that was like from like 2015, 2014, 2016 area. And I just remember people talking about that they wish that like their matches had shade and water. And like that is not like everything stocked, everything is
Mhm.
iced up. Like we're at the point now where we have sodas in the bin, which isn't too bad. And honestly, I just found out the perfect recovery drink are cold Mexican sodas. No big caffeine buzz, a little bit of nice sugar for some energy, and no corn syrup drag at the end of it. But like
I was
there's
thinking of just getting Christina Baker to come give me one of those IV things, but Troy had to go and say, "No, you can't have that because that's performance enhancing."
What?
Yeah.
hydration's performance enhancing. All right, maybe we should get rid of caffeine and creatine while we're out there too. Thanks everybody. The one thing too is like with part-time stages. Hard time stages for the average shooter and the recreational shooter and the people who are banged up are the worst stages on earth. Like I have never we went and shot like a Barry Steel Open in like 2015 or 2016 and there was a guy his name was Jim and he came out with us and he was like the club president at our and he went out there and we literally watched him have scores of like 9 plates, 8 plates, 12 plates when everyone else was getting like 20, 25 plates or whatever like that. Just because, what he was bringing to the club wasn't his sheer physical performance in shooting, it was a more of an administrative thing. But like, yeah, like there's a lot of people who, like our club has a very large dedicated set of individuals who are in the retirement years, and that's how they can, put all this time into the club and making the club fantastic. And part-time stages are not are they're just not good. And for brand newer shooters, they are very hard to deal with too. And so,
I almost think they're more dangerous for newer shooters because the new shooters are like, oh, I guess I have to do this in 5 seconds. I'm going to spaz out
yep,
and just run around like a goat on fire.
You do see
And
that happen a lot, honestly.
that's dangerous on part time. So I'm like, I
At,
get it. And I
at a
get
level
like,
two, at a level two, I mean, you kind of make the assumption that people aren't going to be brand new,
right.
but your point is actually quite valid.
yep.
And I mean, it literally, the stage was called It's Tradition. So, I mean, I get like if they say, well, we have to do a part time stage. But my question is so for me, looking at my division and looking at a part time, it's like, well, I would think that if it was set up correctly, if a part time was set correctly, the number one person in my division should have either cleaned it with, if it was worth 60 points total, they probably should have cleaned it with either, let's say, I don't know, 57 to 60 points or
Right.
55 to 60 points. And I don't think what did I say? Leo, I think, was the best with 54. So if the very best person, the very best time in the whole match wasn't even close to cleaning it, it was 10% off plus cleaning it, then I would say well, it's clearly then it's not calibrated correctly then.
Right.
Yep. Yep.
But again, it kind of goes back to what you were talking about is, well, what's the goal? If the goal was to have no one finish it, then the goal was achieved.
Yep.
Yeah.
There is
So-
one thing, the last thing that I talk about in the match is there is a young junior shooter who is having like all the Glock problems in all the world, and me and Tyrell spent a couple.
To be fair, they weren't Glock problems.
They were not Glock problems. They were agency
Zev.
problems. Zev. That's right. That was the marking on the slide. And me and Tyrell just took that thing apart and we're looking at springs and all that sort of stuff. We like had this competition firing pin block spring that was getting bound up, so we put a factory OEM one in there, and like Blake Blake brought us a spring and stuff to take apart and put in. And the craziest thing, the thing is that Tyrell figured this out. He pulled out the firing pin and looked at someone had grounded down the end of the firing pin that was in that slide because the slide hole wasn't the firing pin needed to be filed so it would fit properly through the hole that it was being trying to shove through the striker channel because the
Wow.
striker channel wasn't all set up. And it's just like I sent the mom like, here's some like used Glock 45s, here's like the way how to find like the cheapest MOS you can get on there. And I left the match and then I was so proud to see that somebody won a SIG, like, you can't,
Mm-hmm.
it's still free, and gave it to the kid, and I was just like, you know what,
Oh,
that's
really?
that's
Yeah.
that's that's freaking amazing. Like that's
Who gave him a gun?
I don't know. I don't know. He like Little Chief. Sorry, his name's Stetson. He actually came out of our new shooter match. Um, but I've always called him Little Chief. But he came up to me. He's like, yeah, the gun didn't work, but I got a SIG, and I know, don't make fun of it, but it's a SIG. And I'm
you
like, that's
know, eh,
awesome, dude. I
well,
was
the
happy. I was so happy for him.
the good thing, if the SIG goes off and shoots him, like SIG's gonna cut him a check. Like they don't
Yeah.
want like some 13-year-old with a hole in his foot, brought to you by the fine people at Sig Sauer. Uh,
It just makes me happy. It just gives me this warm feeling inside that all the random stuff that I say to like new shooters, like because I always ask them. We were talking about like dropping a gun, and I'm like, like don't try and catch a falling gun. Then I always ask questions like, how many of you guys have a SIG? And people are like,
yep.
and I'm like, you're all going to die.
Yeah.
And
Well,
then
here,
and I always tell people, when they stop laughing, I'll stop telling the joke. But like, it's nice to know that Stetson still keeps that in his memory. But
the I saw very little Glocks. Me and Jared were noticing, like, we're not seeing like anybody shoot stock Glocks, or stocks and Glocks and carry optics. The
well,
S
to be fair, Jory Anderson shoots an M&P, and he's so good with it that there's a lot of folks who'd be like, "Oh man, the M&P is actually a pretty good firearm," and so
Well,
you're
who
seeing
was it?
a lot of that
Is
kind
it
of like
Hunter?
branch out. Constantine, yeah,
Is
he shoots the
Constantine
MP.
shooting MP?
Uh-huh.
I think that's what this new group. There's a new younger crowd that I kind of feel like Hunter is their god,
Yeah,
and so there's a lot of dudes kind of
I
drinking
didn't.
that
That makes
Kool-Aid,
sense. That makes sense.
and so there's a lot of guys doing and replicating that, because I think that's what happens with every. Because honestly, I don't want to say there's different generations of shooters, but I kind of think there are different generations
Yep.
of shooters. There's this one generation that came in, and when this guy was at the top, he hit a shadow too.
or a
Everybody who
Tanfo.
started, yeah, exactly. Everybody who started then, when he was the winner, they're all shooting shadows. What about this guy? Oh, well, they were all shooting Glocks because Shane or Bob Vogel or whoever, and then this is now it's moved on to a little bit of more staccatos or this or
Right.
that, and now you're starting to have the famous guys, the hot guys on Instagram right now. I think are what, Isaac Lockwood and Hunter Constantine. So you got a lot of dudes rocking the P320s, built out exactly how Isaac does his. Then you have a bunch of dudes running M&Ps just like how Constantine does his. And I mean, they're all good guns. Those M&Ps are
No,
fantastic.
Well,
they're
it should be noted though that the two Glocks that I did see at the match, they both had catastrophic problems.
Womp womp.
Yeah. Oh, actually, hey, so people don't. This is actually kind of cool. I actually I got a reshoot on a stage. It is commonly understood in Utah at Slipsa, if you shoot a piece of steel, you will lose that calibration because our steel
board
is
falling
literally
poppers.
that good.
Yep.
I've never seen someone win a calibration
Yeah,
here.
I talked to Blake and he said it's only happened once, and now it's happened twice because I shot. It was that stage where you step in and you shoot the activator. The swinger goes on the one side, and then you step back out, and it do that whole thing. But I step in, I hit the activator, step out, and then I shoot the swinger, and 1, 2, 3 on the steel, and the middle still doesn't go down. And I shot it low, and so I get back and I shoot it one more time, and it's in the bottom edge of the calibration zone, but I shot it and it doesn't go. And so go through, finish the stage, and I'd gotten so flustered that I completely forgot to take the swinger on the right side, and so effectively I have 3 mics on the stage, and it's like, well, shit, that's
That's it.
that. Yeah. And so, but then I'm looking at they're unloading choke clear, and I'm looking at the thing, and I'm like, we're calling calibration on that thing, even though I know I'm gonna lose it. So sure enough, they call Dan over, and he stands where I shoot, takes a shot at it, and sure as shit, it goes down. I'm like, well, crap. But then it's like, well, we have the new popper rule, so he gets Brandon Mantooth who set the popper originally, he says, "You go and set it exactly." So Brandon goes over there. He sets it
Wait,
back
what's
up.
this new popper rule?
So they'll shoot it for calibration, and then then they'll reset it, and then shoot it again. Because if you think about it, like when somebody shoots the popper, it starts to
It's the opening the pickle jar rule. Like if you sit
Right.
there and you
yes,
crank on the pickle jar, then the
that's
next guy, yeah,
that's why I always thought calibration was stupid, because I'm like, well, obviously the first 1 to 2 hits
yeah.
has
I
moved it,
started
and so a
knocking it
third,
over.
yeah, might get it over.
Right, and that's exactly that's kind of why that's there. And so he went and reset it, and then Dan shoots it again and puts it right in the center, and the sucker doesn't go down. And I was just like, "Thank you, Jesus."
yep, yep.
And
Good job,
I
Brandon.
yeah, seriously. We went over and we looked at it, and the angle on the plate was so aggressive because the screw had, you could actually see it. The screw had actually backed all the way out, and so even when you hit it, the bolt, the plate would move just slightly, and it would just basically, if it moved at all, it would only slightly move down.
Yep.
And so we fixed it, and it worked just fine. But yeah, I actually won a popper calibration.
Yeah,
That
well,
does
good
not
for,
happen.
good for you. Like the one thing too about these forward falling poppers that's so fantastic is like for a competitive standard, like they're really good because like you can low hit them all day long and they're still probably gonna fall. Like that's the
Yeah.
one.
Yep.
Like they just fall. And you know, for better or worse, or for aiming or lack of aiming, like you hit them and they, if you're not aiming, they tell you you're aiming, and so you can proceed to go through the rest of the stage and go like, what? And then you know they really do work, and it's a lot of fun. But like I just want to say like publicly like I was in a shit mood for the past couple weeks, and Robert, you know, drugged me out, and you know, all my friends told me how much they were thinking of me, and so, you know, thank you, Robert, for being my friend.
Yeah,
So,
buddy.
and for these,
Always.
yeah, no thanks to Jared, asshole. Anyways,
That's fair.
no, thank you to Jared. Everyone's,
Fuck you, Tom.
hi, easy. Everyone's been absolutely fantastic for me, and it was a really great thing to go to do that state match. And so, thank you for all that. So, for Robert Wyatt and Jared Stepp, I'm Tom Nelson, bidding you peace, love, and soul as we depart into the open waters of the Sea of Life on a little tugboat we like to call the PARAcast.
Good night, everybody.
Doot doot.